Hello, this is the England Pod Lionesses edition. The domestic season is done. It's time to fully focus on the international fixtures ahead of a huge summer in Switzerland, where Sarina Wiegman's side will defend their European Championship title. We'll talk through the squad, what we want to see from the upcoming UEFA Nations League fixtures, and raise an eyebrow or even two at this week's World Sevens tournament in Lisbon. With me is the England Pod's David Walker and Kathryn Batte, women's football reporter at The Telegraph. So last time we convened, guys, we had a very confusing international break, didn't we? Of a resounding win against Belgium and a crushing defeat against Belgium. So where are we at the moment? Let's talk through the squad first of all. And David, you're very enthused by the return of some very, very big figures, aren't you?
Yeah, it's great to have Georgia Stanway, Alex Greenwood, Lauren Hemp back in the squad. Obviously, they missed out last time. Three big players for England who are obviously going to need to play a big part in the summer if we're going to have success. Looking back at the last camp, I actually listened. I wasn't on the recap pod with you. I listened to you both on that pod. I think as I was probably passing Kathryn on the Eurostar. I was heading out to Paris as you were coming back from Belgium. And yeah, I mean, it all went really well, didn't it, on that Friday night at Ashton Gate? It looked great. And then a few days later over in Belgium, defensively, England looked so bad. These two games, again, Nations League games, they're important in and of themselves, but also really they're de facto warm-up games, I guess, aren't they, for the Euros? We've got one game against Jamaica before the Euros, but these two against quality opposition, I think we'll learn a lot, won't we, about how good, how the shape that we're in ahead of the tournament.
These are the big games, aren't they? Portugal, we should say, and Spain, which is the really big one. And as Dave mentioned there, Stanway, Greenwood, Hemp back. The only one is Lauren James missing. Otherwise, I think that's pretty much full strength, would you say?
As David said, it's great to have Stanway back. Obviously, she's not played yet, so I'm not 100% sure how fit she is, although I think she has progressed pretty well. Lauren Hemp and Alex Greenwood have obviously played for Man City, so have got a bit more game time under their belts. I am concerned about Lauren James just because how fit is she going to be if she does come back before the tournament? I think the aim is for her to return for that warm-up game against Jamaica. I'd be very surprised if she's not in the squad because even Sarina kind of chatting at the announcement was almost saying, well, I can't take three players that are sort of maybe not 100% fit, but I can take one. I can gamble on one who's kind of, a match winner. That's essentially kind of what she was hinting at. So I think even if there's a slight chance that Lauren James can be fit for that first game or be on the bench, I think she'll be in the squad. But my concern is that if she's going to come back, not be ready, and then potentially, make the injury that she's got worse, that's the concern. I think England kind of have, having Lauren Hemp coming back is a big boost. So hopefully, we can kind of get a lift off that. But yeah, Lauren James, as we've kind of said before, there's not really a player like her. So you do want her to be fit and available.
That initial update on the injury from Chelsea when she did the hamstring said that she would be out for a period of time, which is concerningly vague language, isn't it?
It sounded like it was written by Emma Hayes, didn't it? It was sort of gone back in time, and Emma Hayes was still manager, and she was like, "She'll be out for a period of time," as if so nobody knows when she's coming back. Clubs are a bit more.
What that means, Kathryn? Yeah. Are you like? I mean, you're now quite a seasoned journalist who goes to these press conferences. Can you decipher what that actually means?
She wasn't going to play for Chelsea again. Essentially, I think was the meaning behind the statement. Emma Hayes used to say people were fine. I remember before the last World Cup, she must have said Millie Bright was fine for about 10 weeks, and then Millie Bright didn't play until the very last warm-up game before Australia. So I think it was essentially Chelsea's kind of get out of jail free of not having to say whether she would miss the Euros, and essentially kind of leave that decision to England, but kind of basically be like, she's not going to play for Chelsea.
Chelsea had Melanie Leupolz, didn't they, saying she had COVID for ages, and it turned out she was pregnant, which I think concerned everyone as a sort of side effect to getting COVID. But that was that was quite a good cover. It's odd, but I think possibly Lauren James. First of all, that she's, an incredible player and one that I don't think any many other teams, certainly not England, don't have another player like her, or other teams, I think, and will have a player like her. It's also the way where she plays on the pitch. You can kind of carry that sort of player, can't you? Whereas, like as you said, Kathryn, actually with Millie Bright, she obviously went straight in and she played in the tournament, but she did look quite rusty, didn't she? Which is a bit more concerning as a centre half.
Yeah, I think I remember that first game, and we were all kind of watching it, thinking, "Oh, is she going to be all right?" And then she thankfully, after a few games, she looked kind of back to normal. Which I guess you expect that when you've been out for such a long period of time. But they were obviously desperate to have her because she'd been named captain with Leah Williamson being injured. So losing both of them would have been, catastrophic, really. So they obviously wanted to make sure Millie was fit. And once she got past that first game, and maybe the second game as well, she did kind of look back to herself. But I guess with Lauren James, even if she wasn't fit to play 90 minutes, if you could get 20 minutes out of her in the first game, it's just worth having her there, because she can just do things that other players can't do, and she could just produce that kind of magical moment. If a game's kind of 0-0 or England is struggling to create something, she could just pop up and, do something special. And they have got players that can do that, but not quite in the same way that Lauren James can.
It's feeling quite familiar, this discussion. It feels like a discussion I've heard many times over the years when talking about the men's team ahead of World Cups and ahead of Euros. Look, you can't do anything about it, right? It's the end of a long season. You're bound to have fitness concerns, generally speaking, but it's not a great position to be going into a tournament. I mean, these two games, let alone the tournament, with some of your best and most talented players with big question marks over their fitness. And it just, from a distance, it just gives me a slight unease about the backdrop to this tournament, because it's not just James, it is the others, as we just mentioned. Stanway woefully short of match practice and match fitness. Like, we're going to need these players if we're going to try and emulate what we did in 2022.
As you say, it wouldn't be an England squad, would it? Without sort of fitness concerns. It's we can't go in with everyone fit and no one worrying. That wouldn't be right at all.
I was told Stanway's a quick healer. That's how it was described to me. So.
Okay. So
I know she's not playing.
Geller, is she?
Go back to Glenn Hoddle and his.
She's a quick healer, so apparently is almost kind of fitter than she was before she did the injury. So while obviously match fitness or match kind of practice is obviously the concern. If she could get a bit of game time in these Nations League games and then against Jamaica, and whether England play a behind closed doors game in Switzerland, I don't know. I'd be less concerned about her, just because it sounds like she's doing quite well, even though she's not played yet.
Did you see her carrying Harry Kane? She was the only one who could carry a tune. Did you hear that? Her and Harry Kane were singing some sort of weird techno version of Sweet Caroline, the Bayern. Yeah, I think I was visibly cringing watching that, but mainly because of Harry. He needs to. I don't think he's a natural on the mic, is he?
It's nice that they're mates, though.
George done it before, hasn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the German players are a bit sick of her kind of coming up with that every time. But yeah, I mean, have we mentioned that, match practice, some of these players are going to have some very sort of odd match practice with this World Sevens tournament that is being played this week as we record, ahead of the Champions League final, which we'll talk about as well this weekend. So it's tournament Wednesday to Friday. Pitch is the half of a size of 11-a-side pitch, smaller goals, two halves of 15 minutes each, rolling subs. And Manchester United in particular are bringing some very big names. You've got Ella Toone, Maya Letitia, Grace Clinton in terms of the Lionesses sort of tinge to it. Jess Park from Manchester City. We think Georgia Stanway's going, although it's difficult to see from the Bayern team. I mean, first of all, Kathryn, what do you actually make of this concept?
Yeah, I mean, as someone who's flying out there tomorrow to go and sit in the sun of Estoril for a couple of days, I think it's great. I'm not sure if everybody else agrees, but selfishly, I'm quite looking forward to it. On Stanway, I don't think Stanway is going to play. I think she's essentially going to be there, as a representative of Bayern Munich, but isn't going to play in the tournament, as far as I'm aware, just because of the fact she's only just back and fit. I think that was the same concern with Hemp and Greenwood, why they weren't in the Man City squad. Man United obviously are playing for their transfer budget for next season, so have named the strongest team that they can. Makes it interesting, actually, because I think, which teams are going to want to win it more. And I do think the likes of Man United, maybe the teams like Benfica that are in it and Ajax that will take it quite seriously, PSG potentially. I don't know not how bothered, but kind of how desperate Man City would be to win it. Obviously, maybe it would kind of improve their season slightly, but I do think Man United are very, very keen on that prize money. The format's going to be interesting because I don't know. You would think ordinarily a team like Man City, sort of 7-a-side, passing the ball around, would suit them down to the ground. Obviously, their best players aren't there, but you still kind of think, well, maybe that format would suit them. Would it suit maybe Manchester United, who don't kind of play that same style of football? I don't know, but I can imagine someone like Ella Toone would be kind of well up for it. So it's going to be interesting to see how seriously they take it, kind of how many tackles are flying in. The players going to be a bit cautious of not wanting to get injured. We heard Sarina say the England players that take part are going to make smart decisions. So if they are flying into tackles, I imagine she's going to be very angry about it. But I'm intrigued to see kind of how it's received, how much interest there is. Because, is this going to be like a one-off year where, there's a bit of interest now because it's the first one, and then is it going to die down? Or is it a tournament that actually can grow and get stronger? But as I say, in the son of Portugal, I'm sure it'd be great. If it was over in England, I'd be less kind of excited about it.
It's an interesting... Yeah, I mean, it is an interesting concept. I mean, I was reading some of the sort of PR around it earlier on, and it didn't take long for me to see what I expected to see was that the organisers are hoping this will attract a younger following to the sport. And, very much in the same way that the sort of Baller League has been set up in terms of... It feels a bit like old men deciding that short-sided football is what's going to get the young people watching, which may or may not come to pass. We'll see. But the financial aspect is interesting, one I hadn't considered there, saying that Man United are playing for money that will help them. I mean, there's a few million quid up for grabs, isn't there, for the winner?
1.9 million, I think, for the winner, right. And then obviously you can pick up more kind of going through. Part of it goes to the players, but obviously part of it will go to the club as well.
Initially, like you were saying, Robyn, you look at the names that are in the Man United and Man City squads and you think, oh, God, I mean, imagine if one of them gets injured. It's only a problem if it becomes a problem. If you go there and you get through it unscathed and you have a nice time and everyone enjoys it, great, it's not an issue. But if the worst case scenario happens and Ella Toone does her ACL playing 7-a-side in Portugal like a month before the Euros, it's a complete disaster. I mean, hopefully they're going to use the rolling subs to its fullest extent possible when these England players are concerned. But, you would just think that they're obviously competitors and maybe when they're on the pitch, they're going to be going full tilt. But you'd think just the very nature of it being 7-a-side would mean they're not going to be putting in the same sort of effort if it was, say, they were playing like a full 11-a-side tournament at this time of year.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. If the worst does happen, you'd be so furious, wouldn't you? I mean, as a fan, but also Sarina Wiegman and... Yeah, maybe they'll do 2 minutes each or something. You know how you do when you go to 5-a-side yourself. They've got someone timing it, and then give us your best 2 minutes. Don't get smashed into a cage or whatever, like you can do. I don't know what it's going to look like.
But what's interesting, in one sense, is that it's not a FIFA sanctioned or UEFA sanctioned tournament. It's not like to compare to, say, like the Club World Cup, which is going to happen for the men in a few weeks. That's a FIFA tournament where there are consequences if you don't turn up and if you don't play and that sort of thing. Whereas this sort of exists outside the codified structures of football. It's a commercial enterprise. So I guess that's where the tension would be from the FA's point of view, saying, why are you doing this? Where the clubs are going to be obviously looking at that bottom line and thinking, well, there's money in it for us here, so we want to try and win it.
Well, Kathryn, you'll have to give us a full report on that. when we come back,
Yeah.
in a bucket hat in one hand or on your head, and then a pint and a pastel de nata in the other. What a week in store. I guess you go to the Champions League final as well.
I am indeed, yeah. I missed the last day of the sevens because it clashes with the press conferences for the Champions League. So I do see the Mary Earps reunion with Man United on Thursday, though, which is on at 9:30 in the evening. It's like they really make it. I think they've basically put it on at the end to make sure everyone stays for the full day to watch the Earps United reunion. And then she'll probably not play or something. They'll probably play the other goalkeeper.
Right, that's it for part one. In part two, we'll look ahead to the UEFA Nations League games in a bit more detail. So Portugal at home on Friday the 30th of May for England, and then Spain away on Tuesday the 3rd of June. 2 wins and they will go into this knockout tournament, but that's in October. I mean, we can't really look past the summer, can we? I mean, Kathryn, do you want to go into a bit more detail about what you'd like to see from these 2 games? We've got these 2 and then we've got that warm-up against Jamaica. Do we kind of want to see Sarina Wiegman experimenting, or do we want to see her nailing down the starting 11 for that first game?
I think the latter. I think we need to see which players she thinks is going to be her starting 11. Obviously, whether Stanway, who probably would be in the starting 11 at a tournament, is fit enough to start against Portugal. I'm not sure. But I really just want to see England kind of go at Portugal a little bit and really kind of take the game to them. Portugal gave us a difficult game away from home, but they're now missing 2 of their best players in Kika Nazareth and Jessica Silva. So I'd expecting England to, dominate the ball and hopefully be a bit more clinical than they have been, in the group so far. Then the game against Spain, I think that's the one in terms of assessing, how close England are to being ready for the tournament, because they beat Spain at home. It was a really, really good performance. I don't think maybe people were expecting them to play as well as they did. Going away to Spain, who didn't have Alexia Putellas in the first game and will do in the second match. And obviously, those Barcelona players have been in very, very good form at club level. That's going to be really interesting to see kind of where England are at. And again, I think I just want to see them put in the same performance they did against Spain at home. And I think Sarina would probably take a point in that game, depending on kind of how that first game goes. Obviously, it's very, very close in the group, and you do want to finish top. England losing against Belgium didn't really help them. So ideally, they probably need to win both games, but I think you would take a point against Spain away from home, just in the general kind of scheme of things.
Looking at Spain and Portugal's results against each other, Spain battered Portugal twice in this Nations League campaign, and to see that we only got a draw away at Portugal, albeit in a difficult game, but surely it doesn't. Obviously, football doesn't work like this on paper, but it seems strange to me that we aren't going into this Portugal game confident of a really healthy victory.
I think in those games against Spain and Portugal were without those 2 players, whereas against England they did have them. I think it was Nazareth that came off the bench and scored a really good goal. 2 players don't make a team, but I think losing them just kind of almost drained Portugal of a little bit of confidence. And once you kind of concede against Spain, they were just really, really clinical, and that's what England weren't away from home. Portugal are just tricky, and England have found it difficult against them. They played them as a warm-up game before the World Cup, and I think drew 0-0. So we've just kind of found it difficult to play against them for whatever reason. Spain obviously kind of nearly lost to Belgium in that first game, and then came back to win 3-2. And it'll be interesting to kind of see what how they play against them in their first game, because England obviously thrashed them at home and then lost away from home. I don't know if that's just how international football has become a bit unpredictable, and a lot of the top teams can sometimes have off days and sometimes have really good days. It's certainly how England are. I do think there are other nations that kind of struggle with consistency. Spain probably less so, but like the likes of Germany and France definitely have struggled like England in terms of having that kind of consistent performance and result.
It's like Spain weren't that consistent in the Olympics, were they? The last tournament, they looked sort of quite fragile at times, didn't they? So I think it might be closer than we think. I was wondering earlier that in the FA Cup final, and this is very different, of course, but Sonia Bonpastor switched to a back 3 and they looked even better, I would argue. And obviously Sarina Wiegman did that sort of midway through the World Cup, didn't she? And it kind of helped do think we still have a bit of a problem at left back, don't we? And I just wondered whether, with Alex Greenwood coming back and not really playing as a left back for quite a while for club, do we think that could be a way forward even to start the tournament? I'm not sure.
Be a back four, a back three, or a back five, and however it works. I guess it might mean you've got Lauren Hemp playing as a wing back, which I don't know if that maybe you then lose sort of some of her forward ability because she's having to get back to defend. But I do think she would do that job very well. It feels slightly more defensive, but like if England's problems are in defence, then maybe you sort that first, and then you've got enough kind of firepower up front. And it did work in the World Cup. I don't see Sarina Wiegman doing it just because I think she did it maybe in a friendly, and like that was the time she did it, and she's not done it since. And I feel like if she was going to kind of try it out, she'd have been playing it kind of in the previous games, and I'd be surprised if she switched to it. She might have something up her sleeve to switch to in a tournament like she kind of did in the World Cup, in terms of if something's not working, this is the formation we're going to change to. I also think Jess Carter's very, very good in a back three, less so in a back four. But it probably would be Greenwood, Williamson and Bright if that would be the three centre-backs. But I think maybe it might be like an option if the tournament's kind of going badly, if they lose the first game or something like that. But I'd be surprised to see her kind of start the tournament that way.
So in terms of domestically, 6 players from Chelsea in the squad, obviously just completed the domestic treble, unbeaten the WSL and the other domestic competitions. I mean, Millie Bright's a shoo-in, isn't she? What about the others, do we think? I mean, Niamh Charles has had a kind of up and down season. Beaver Jones has looked good, and she scored off the bench, didn't she, in the last international break? What do we think?
Yeah, I think Millie Bright is pretty much guaranteed to start. I think she's had a really, really good season. It's interesting with Niamh Charles because she was out the Chelsea team for a little bit because Sandy Baltimore was playing at left back, and then in the last kind of month of the season, Baltimore seemed to move further up the pitch and Charles started playing. I half wondered whether Sarina just rang Sonia and said, "Can you play my left back? Because I don't have anyone else to play there. It's really unhelpful that you're not playing her." I'm assuming she didn't do that. But Hampton, we think at the minute is the number one. That's basically what Sarina said in the last camp. So I'd be expecting her to start that first game. Beaver Jones, I think, is probably still an impact sub, and I actually think that's probably best for her right now in an England shirt. I think she can come off the bench and potentially impact a game, whereas I think, if Lauren Hemp's fit, I think Beth Mead and Chloe Kelly are probably ahead of Beaver Jones in Wiegman's mind just because they've played more, many more games for her. And obviously Lauren James can play out wide as well. But I do think Beaver Jones is somebody that could, potentially come on for an Alessia Russo if she was getting a bit tired, or, if it wasn't working for her. She can play centrally as well as playing out wide. And she's made an impact off the bench for England previously, so I think that will probably be her role, and that's probably for the best right now, but definitely in the future she could be a starter.
The Chelsea players are in an interesting sort of place, I think, because you're unbeaten domestically, you've won the treble, you've had everything your own way, and then all of a sudden you're going into, so that should give you confidence in one sense. They'll be on top of the world going into the tournament confident, but all of a sudden you're playing in a team that's not going to have it all its own way. And that could potentially be a sort of tricky thing for them to handle, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting that Chelsea defence looks so solid, and then when they've played for England, they haven't looked as solid. And I know it's not like Leah Williamson's playing in it as well, and it's not all Chelsea, but primarily it's Chelsea players. Keira Walsh as well for Chelsea hasn't really played the same role as she does for England, whereas everything for England has pretty much always gone through Keira Walsh. It didn't seem to be that way at Chelsea, so you almost didn't notice her as much. So it's interesting going to be kind of seeing how she transitions back to playing for England, having been kind of, at Chelsea for the last few months. I think winning should breed confidence, and I think, the likes of Lucy Bronze, who has had a really good season for Chelsea, she should just kind of come into this England team and kind of have that mentality anyway. I just think it's defensively where the issues are, and it's just intriguing that they've been so good for Chelsea, but when they're playing for England, it doesn't seem to work in the same way. And I don't know if that's because of the players in front of them, the way England play is different to Chelsea, or if the standard of opposition at international level is just better than what they're playing in the WSL. But it is interesting that we're mainly concerned about the defence, but when they're playing for Chelsea, we don't have the same concerns.
There's so many parallels with the men, isn't there, Dave? It's like, where's our DM? It's so similar, isn't it? Because I'm just thinking for Chelsea, you've got Erin Cuthbert sort of ratting about, winning absolutely everything. And I'm not sure, Keira Walsh can do that. She's obviously known as a creative player. I think she does win possession back quite a bit. I think Stanway, she's the one, isn't she? We need to sort of really assess her fitness. Grace Clinton, actually, she's pretty physical, isn't she? I've kind of been quite impressed with her. I think she still lacks a bit of experience, doesn't she, particularly international level, but I do like her attributes. I think I think she really could be a very important player going forward. Just another sort of nod domestically, as we mentioned, so Arsenal in the Champions League final this weekend, so more sort of nervous watching for us to make sure that the likes of Williamson, Kelly, Mead and Russo don't get injured. I mean, it would be amazing for them, wouldn't it, if they managed to do it, Kathryn? It's actually kind of almost like, can you do it also? Because it would strike a bit of a psychological blow for England, because this Barcelona team is pretty much Spain, isn't it?
Yeah, it's going to be so tough for Arsenal, I think, just going forward. Barcelona, we saw them against Chelsea and they were just so good. You're kind of hoping they just have an off day and that Arsenal, everything goes right, as it kind of did for them against Lyon. And they were the underdogs in that game and surprised people with the way they played in that second leg. So it's not out of the question that they can cause a shock, but they're going to have to play the perfect game, maybe get a little bit of luck on the day. And I think you just have to rattle Barcelona. I think Chelsea did it last season in that first leg. They didn't really like the physicality of Chelsea, the time wasting that Aitana Bonmati was sort of complaining about after the game. I think Arsenal did rattle Lyon, and I think they've got to try and get in Barca's heads, but it's very, very difficult to do that when Barcelona are so streetwise themselves and have been there and done it so many times.
Need Arsenal to channel the spirit of Crystal Palace, although I don't think Barcelona are quite as bad as Man City have been in the Premier League this season by the sounds of it. But it's a nice subplot though, isn't it? As you say, like so many of those Barcelona players are in the Spain team, and they'll be playing 10 days after this game. So an opportunity perhaps, if you're not going to win the game, at least stick one on one of the players at some point.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So there might be a similar podcast, the Spain podcast, saying the same about ours. So yeah, we'll see. You can stick one. I mean, we can get Katie McCabe can be our sort of our representative maybe to do that, because I think she enjoys that sort of side of the game.
Katie. That's one thing you won't want to do.
Maybe not. No, that's true. That's very true. And yeah, maybe Van Domselaar could I don't know, have that invisibility cloak that Dean Henderson had as well with that Crystal Palace incident. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. We'll round off by the most important discussion that was you wanted to bring to the table, Dave. The new kit has been unveiled. And yeah, there's been a lot of comparisons with a men's training top from yesteryear.
Yeah. So it's the new home kit with the sort of red and blue kind of pattern across the top. It looks very similar to the men's 2018 training kit, and I had that kit and I was looking for it ahead of this pod, but I don't think I've got it anymore. Maybe I've accidentally given it to charity, which is a shame. Not that it would fit anymore, but yeah, it does look like they've kind of delved into the archive and gone, well, should we just update this one a little bit? Not that I don't think it's a bad kit though. I think it's quite a nice design.
No, I guess it's difficult, especially with the home kit. There's only so much you can do, really, isn't there?
Yeah, you keep it simple, or you try and do something a bit different, and they've gone down the latter route this time.
So, would you buy either of those?
So I own the 1986 retro kind of World Cup kit, and it looks a bit like they've tried to kind of copy that, but make it modern. It kind of looked like it was made on paint, like someone's got a spray painted the kit sort of blue and red a little bit. I think it's grown on me slightly. Like when I first saw it, I thought, oh, I don't like that. But when I was like, oh, maybe they're trying to kind of copy the 1986 one, it's not too bad. I think once they've played in it for a while, we'll probably just forget, won't we? But I thought the away kit was quite nice. I do think England away kits, you can be a bit more creative. Like you said, home kit is white, and then it's sort of like, what else do you do with it? Put a bit of red and blue on, and it's essentially kind of what they've done.
I've been looking at the prices of the flights to Zurich for the Euros, and they're not as bad as I thought. I mean, I assume the accommodation is going to be the big issue, but yeah, I am sort of starting to get into the mood a little bit now, and sort of eyeing up maybe that France group game as a bit of an opener. I wanted to end just with one slightly more serious question to the pair of you, because I've sort of been thinking about, as we said earlier, the sort of backdrop to this tournament. England certainly not going into it massively confident at the moment. And Robyn, you've already professed your undying love for Sarina Wiegman, but what would it take for that position to change, I guess? Like, is she completely bulletproof, or does like a bad tournament, us say going out in the first knockout round, or God forbid going out of the group stage, her contract goes to the World Cup? But what would it take for her to be under serious pressure after these Euros?
Well, as for me, as you know, she could do pretty much anything and she wouldn't be under pressure. I think we do need to remember that England have got to the last two finals. You know, obviously didn't make it to the Olympics, which was a disappointment, but won one, lost one narrowly. And obviously the aim is to go to Switzerland and defend the title and at least get to the final. It might not happen. In fact, it's unlikely to, maybe, because I think just going to 3 tournaments and winning or getting to a final is really hard. And yeah, England aren't in as good a shape as they were, you know, ahead of the 2022 tournament. I wonder if it would actually have to come from her. I mean, Kathryn, you're the one who's more sort of in the know. I think, you know, her body of work is such that I just can't see her really being actually sacked. I don't know what your feeling is.
I think she'd have to cause a diplomatic incident or something of the like. Even if they would go out of the group, I don't think the FA would sack her, even if they lost every game, you know, badly. I think, you know, I think, as you say, it would have to come from Sarina. She'd have to be fed up or potentially have a better offer, but obviously she's contracted. So if someone wanted to come in and poach her, they'd have to obviously, you know, pay something for her. But yeah, unless she does something really bad, I don't think she'll be here until 2027 unless she decides she wants to go.
It's
That
good to
was your
get that out of
question,
the way.
Dave.
Yeah, good
Bulletproof.
to know where we stand. Yeah, okay, great.
Yeah.
She's bulletproof.
That's a nice note to end on. My thanks to you, Kathryn, and to you, Dave. That's it for the England Pod Lionesses edition. We'll be back with a roundup after the next 2 international games. Portugal at home on Friday the 30th and Spain away on Tuesday the 3rd of June. Thank you very much for listening. We'll catch you next time.